Actually, I have performed 80% of what I was expected to deliver. When we were appointed as ministers by late President Netumbo, one of the things he did very clearly was to give us key deliverables. And the number of key deliverables I had was more generally access to justice, but also making legal aid more accessible. Development of the policy and legal framework for small claims courts, aspects around administration of deceased estates, managing the portfolio that also addresses concerns or administratively were responsible for the Attorney General, Prosecutor General, Ombudsman. I'm not just talking, those are constitutional offices that are independent. So just in terms of legal aid, for example, one of the things we did in my term was to set up a task force that would look at the overall management of access to justice through the legal electronic. We made some firm proposals around, for example, improving the safeguards for protecting members of the public against the independent legal profession that we use or use to outsource legal services. And then we increased the threshold from 3,500 to 7,000. So we made some amendments to the regulations. There were some important amendments that was driven by myself and the team at the Ministry of Justice. Remember, I didn't have a deputy minister, so right at the beginning, I told members of staff at the ministry that all of them were my deputy ministers, and that worked well because I was able to speak to any staff member, I was able to speak to any head of department or directorate, and I had that kind of access, and they also had equally similar access to me. The other thing about legal aid, apart from the legal text that was improved, was the fact that just before my term ended, actually, I made sure that the amendments to the Legal Aid Act that would improve access to justice finalized through the Cabinet Committee on Legislation, which I was chairing as Minister of Justice. And that should be tabled anytime. In fact, when I had to hand over, there were some of the discussions I had. Then there's small claim scope. We've done the policy work, we've done the consultations. We even have a draft bill now. We've even started talking to the University of Namibia Law School, Office of the Judiciary, which is an independent organ, to manage issues pertaining to small claims courts. The other amendments, and I'm talking about managing law reform activities of more than just close to 20 pieces of legislation. 10 of them were directly initiated by the Ministry of Justice. Because you must remember, there's Law Reform and Development Commission, who now is a chairperson and a commission. And then you have various OMAS offices, ministries and agencies that can also initiate their own law reform activities. And then as the ministry, we also have our own. So for example, amendments to the domestic violence and rape legislation to improve the safeguards, particularly post the Shut It All Down movement march. There's been some amendments to our legal aid regulations. We have done some work in administration of deceased estates, particularly estate practitioners. You'd know that many people cannot manage their own estates, so they would appoint an independent person as an executor to assist them. But that process did not have sufficient safeguards on the master's part. So there were some proposals. It hasn't been finalized. And then the other big one that I think was very progressive is the dissolution of marriages, for example. So there were a number of pieces of legislation that we've made sure had gone through the legislature, passed the laws. There are currently some rules that need to be established and initiated in order for those pieces of legislation.
There's one I briefly want to chat about, and for that we'll probably just have about a minute and a half or so. But it was towards the very end of your tenure, and that's the Ombudsman's Bill.
Yes.
Which then again, at the very end of your tenure, was then removed from the role at Parliament.
Yes.
It's something that it seemed that you were passionate about, as well as the entire ministry, and very confident in its proposal stage or its draft stage. How did you feel about that removal, particularly looking at the voices that were coming both from the opposition and your party's benches in Parliament?
I think it was unfortunate that we had to withdraw it, but I think sometimes taking a step back is not a bad thing. The Ombudsman Bill was really to strengthen the mandate of the Ombudsman, one, but also to make it an independent body, because it's a watchdog, if you'd like. And the fact that although there wasn't any interference, in fact there's no evidence that there was ever interference on the part of the executive in the work of the Ombudsman, we wanted to buttress and strengthen it, the same way that we've done with the judiciary, for example. Because if you look at the Ombudsman, it's a constitutional office. It has very clear mandate that is set out in the provisions of the Namibian Constitution that pertains to human rights protection, promotion. It pertains to maladministration and investigation of public institutions and officials in respect of various aspects of mismanagement. There was and also protection of the environmental protection mandate that the Ombudsman is. So it's an important office. It's also important that the office is independent. Some of the work was actually done by Parliament as an oversight. There was a very clear report, and there was actually maybe slightly insidious pressure on the Ombudsman's office to make sure that they are extricated from the Ministry of Justice. And that came from various international principles around watchdogs and so on. So I think when calls came that maybe there's need for us to do a bit more consultation to look at terminology and so forth, I thought, well, and I discussed it with the Ombudsman to say, it would do no harm for us to wait for the next administration to have a look at some of the concerns that have been raised by some members of the Assembly and to reintroduce the bill, because the bill has general support of the Assembly. So it wasn't really a thing of it was in bad taste. It was really maybe a matter of timing.
Well, it always seems that just when you get into the crux of the matter, time does get in the way. That was the first half of our conversation with former Minister of Justice Yvonne Dausab. We're just trying to sum up her tenure, and it's difficult to sum up 5 years in 10 minutes, as much as we could do. On the flip side of this, we'll see what she's been getting herself up to, and what the future looks like now outside of that role of the Ministry of Justice. It's 8:31. Be on standby. It's 8:39. We do continue our discussion now with the former Minister of Justice Yvonne Dausab. We did spend the first half of our conversation chatting really, and we tried as much as we could to pin in those 5 years into 10 minutes. Perhaps we will extend this conversation to another day or so, and now quickly just to see what she's been up to in her life as well. But perhaps before we get there, former minister, we had you here about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, I'm not quite sure, and we really just spoke about your life and where you grew up, and I want to continue from that point. You spoke to us about your childhood in Katutura, growing up there, and looking back from that point up until just late last week or somewhere last week when you finished your term as Minister of Justice. Could you believe what your life has turned into?
Yes, because I think a lot of what we become is the small steps that we take and decisions that we make and choices we make right at the beginning, whether it's in high school. For example, if my value system and character trait is that I want to live a generally honest life with integrity, and I want to the best of my ability, to do small things over a period of time consistently, and that those things would come with certain types of results. So it's not it's not something that is sprung on you. It's your behavior over time. Even being appointed as the deputy dean in the law school, for example, or before that in 1992, applying on one sheet for a scholarship at the Legal Assistance Center, getting a full scholarship and going to Cape Town at the age of 16, required me to behave a certain way during school time. It's the same, whatever I was doing at the University of Namibia that got noticed by late President Hage when he appointed me as the chairperson of the Law Reform and Development Commission, and then subsequently as the Minister of Justice, is all really just atomic habits, as James Clear calls it. So it's important for people to understand that that it's those choices. But I think also, coming to at least to the end of my term, and I'm not in retirement. I'm in transition. I consider myself. You also then spend time reflecting and saying to yourselves that, well, I got because I'm no longer a minister in her cabinet. But I think, and I believe that there will be many more other opportunities, depending on where I find myself, that I would continue to interact with President.
I'd probably just want to hone a bit on that point, and it's something that we want to move away from quickly. But would you say that, especially now with this transition that we've seen from the incumbent, that there's been a discipline receiving of the changes that have been made from a party level and from a government level? Would you say that you're proud of the transition in that regard? That the ministers have respectfully said it's fine, thank you for the service. This has now been the decision of the new president, and I will leave respectfully. The transition will be respectful, and then there've been disciplined party cadres and members as well. In that regard, is that something that you thought about?
I'm not able to respond on what other people's reaction to the appointments are. I'm only able to do so about my own. And my own reaction has been reflected in the manner in which I have supported and handed over my office to the new minister, Minister Weiss, who's also a friend of mine, a former student of mine. And that has made things a little bit easier. I have confidence in him, and I have also expressed my continued support of his work. I think there's a lot of foundational work that we've done at the Ministry of Justice, that I have done as a minister. And I'm very, very comfortable that at least as he gets in, there will not be many things that he will have to start. There's been some foundations laid. There's been a lot of work that has been done. And me and him have spoken about that during the handover. And all of us were expected to present a comprehensive handover report, which would be at least in the beginning, your guide, if you'd like. Because remember, this is also the same, political party administration. So it's not a new party that's coming into power. It's really a build-up on the past 10 years of late President Hage's administration and some of the things. But we must allow ministers and the president to do some things differently if they think that will work for their administration. I think we must respect as citizens and also as former leaders in the cabinet of what the work is that is being done and what will be done. I think we must not take some of these things personally. I certainly don't. And I'm not saying it was easy, when that decision came, because we now, you now have to rearrange your life in terms of what are the next things that you're going to be doing as a person. But it's certainly not an insurmountable.
What's the past week and a half been like for you?
It's been a mix of there's been some emotion, to be honest. I think because you're also thinking, okay, I'm officially unemployed because you not have a steady income until you have something else coming for you. But I think it's also been interesting what has been going on in the body politic of our country. There's been a lot of news, and if it is true that even executive directors have now been in some ways rearranged and reshuffled, if you'd like, then I think for the staff members at the various ministries, it may also be a little bit difficult. So, but it's also been refreshing, I've been able to take time out. I've been able to detox a little bit from social media, only respond when I really need to. But it's also been a time to really reflect on the past, for me, the past 5 years, but also for many of my colleagues, the past 10 years, 15 years, 30 years, and so forth. Uh, but it also allows you to get back to some basic things like, catching up on your reading, for instance. So I've been doing a lot of that. Also, I've tried not to change my usual patterns or routine. For example, I've always woken up at 4 o'clock so that I can read because you don't get enough time during the day. I've not changed that, for instance. I've not changed my engagement with those that I regularly interact with. I've not changed, for example, my interaction with my colleagues, my former colleagues, but also the new administration. I find myself in a privileged position because many of the people that are now new ministers, people I've either worked with in their previous capacities and so forth. So it's not a complete shock kind of environment I find myself.
Where are we possibly going to see you in the next couple of days, months, years? Have you figured that out?
I think you must wait it out a little bit, and I'm sure I've always been a public person, even before I became minister. So you will hear of me and you will see me. I will not fade away. Like my son said, my son is 20. He turned 20 last week on Friday. And when we were talking about this transition, he said to me, "Mommy, I've always seen you in the public space. I don't want you to fade away." So definitely, Namibians can be assured that I will be in one form or the other. I will be in the public space, and I believe that I still have a lot more to offer in terms of my intellectual capital, in terms of my social capital, my interaction with members of our society and community. It's also nice to be an ordinary citizen. I've never been different in terms of I've always driven myself. I've always done my own shopping. And I found myself in public spaces. It will maybe be a little bit more now. If I don't get any other public office, and so I believe that I have just kind of come back. I'm just spending a little bit more time in different places, in particular in Windhoek. I was in Swakopmund over the weekend, just taking a breather. So it's, I still have children that go to school, so we pick up children and so on. So it's not going to be business as usual. I don't know.
We're ending up our discussion with the former Justice Minister Yvonne Dausab, but we've had a conversation on air that we will extend this conversation. We'll make sure we give you more context on various issues we've spoken about, but perhaps imparting in this transition that you are in now, and I'm sure you've had many of these thoughts throughout your various capacities in life. But where you are now, April 1st, 2025. What's your vision for this country and how can that be attained?
I think the biggest vision, and it aligns with our president's vision for this country, and that is that we have an accelerated pace of service delivery. I was part of developing the next 5-year plan of the Ministry of Justice, and one of the things that we made sure we featured pertinently in our strategic document was to deliver services that were people-centered. And that's significant because then you think about the people first before you make any decision, before you develop any policy, or before you reform any law. So I think, my vision is that we will become a country as we have.
So excuse me for that. That's that.
We will come to a place where Namibians are a caring nation. I hope that we will improve or decrease the rising cases of gender-based violence, particularly against children. I really, really do hope that we will become a society that takes care of each other, the kind of society that the Namibian House espouses to be, where everybody feels included. That we don't discriminate against anyone that is part of our human family. I hope that we will become a country that is not what we've become, where we thrive on the herd of others, that we thrive on, denigrating other human beings, and that we, what other people call character assassination, wanting to cause reputational damage to people and so forth. So I really, really hope that Namibia would focus on a development agenda that is going to see that we have social justice. I certainly hope that both in my current position and in the future, that the law will also become a tool to enhance social justice. It's something I've said for a long time, and we're getting more and more opportunities. And I think also with the new administration, there's lots of opportunities for Namibians, not just those in national leadership, or legislative or judicial leadership, but all of us as a country will, like late President used to say, doing the same day.
Absolutely. It's been a pleasure being in your company this morning, former minister. We do hope that we can talk to you again soon. Like we said, get an hour-long conversation. It's never enough time on radio. It never really is, but it's appreciated nonetheless. And I hope that now that you are less busy with official government business, we can get more time out of you. But it always is a pleasure to be in conversation with you, to have that feedback via SMS, via phone call. We do appreciate you and your service, and we'll be waiting for the next move. Until then, good luck.
Yeah, thank you very much, and it's been a pleasure being here with you. And I hope to talk to you again soon so that we can expand a little bit more on my term and also how I see things pan out over the next 5 years, particularly from a legal justice perspective.
Absolutely. It takes us to 8:54, and we shut down our conversation this morning with the former Minister of Justice, that is Yvonne Dausab.
I'm playing when I was 16, a child from Kadatura. I was, certain things at different times in my life. I worked in Zambia without knowing anybody there. Getting onto a plane in 2001 and flying to Lusaka and starting a job there for 3 years. So it's not insurmountable, and I think we must also not focus too much on the decisions that our president has taken. I think our president has taken decisions that in that moment she believes are the right decisions for her administration, and I respect that. I also respect the fact that I've always had a very warm relationship with the president, and that has not changed.